Hi, my name is Sam Price, known as the Crypto Lifer, and every single Friday we do macro technical analysis here on the channel. We go over Bitcoin, Total 3, the DXY, Bitcoin dominance, US Tether dominance, and the S&P. And if there's any other thing that we're looking at, maybe as a bonus, last week we did Solana. So with that being said, let's jump on into Bitcoin and look at all the macro ideas here on the weekly. We're going to double click and look at just the price action. And for a second, we'll take away the moving averages. Remember, when you were doing my weekly analysis with me, we've been doing these now for on and off about 8 weeks, right? And so back here when we started, we talked about this breaking out. We talked about it. It was super bullish that we got above this trend line and that we were likely going to break further to the upside. So far, all has panned out as we've suggested, and we're continuing to move. Also, the VRVP, if you see this peak here, we've broken this peak, you're likely to continue fall. It's just very likely you to get to 57,000 based on how the VRVP works. Usually once you break a, and you look at like with your head slanted, you would have to look at it like that. But you want to look at it so you were looking straight up like this, and you could see like this is like a ball bouncing down a hill, right? And if it got above this hill, it's very likely to get to these other two nodes. These are called high volume nodes. If there's a red line sticking out, we call that the point of control on the VRVP, the visible range volume profile, the indicator right here on the right side. So all is good for me. Again, too, when we take a look here on the 5-day, I've been using this 5-day previous support or resistance level, also previous resistance, bit of resistance right there, and we've bounced. So you can see we're in this beautiful zone. The second we do lose 41,000, we will fall right back somewhere to about 37, 36K. It's just, there's just not a lot of support. We moved up and down through these areas pretty fast. We will move down through that area quite fast. So that's the bearish idea that if we lose this level here, we will be going down pretty quick. So that's the one thing we do have to talk about. Slap on the moving averages, and you can see the 21 crossing, the 200 SMA, and we talked about how big of a deal this was. We even backtested it and looked at gold. We looked at, gold. We looked at Tesla. We looked at Walmart and a few different other indicator stocks, and showed when the 21 crossed the 200 on the 5-day chart, it was a substantial crossing for any asset in the world, right? So I've got this idea here on the daily as we're kind of getting entrapped. And today was a crazy day. We got the dump. We almost lost it all. But, somehow Bitcoin is attempting to recover 42K as we speak. But this is kind of where we stand. We're in this type of triangle here now on the daily. In my mind, we technically were in it and we lost the trend line. That was a clean trend line that we broke. We were making a very nice descending triangle. But this, you could fake it still and attempt to say we're still holding a bottom trend line. And if we get a bounce, we do get a bounce. However, when the 21 starts to curve and you start to lose the 21, you usually test this area and things can get worse. Today, we really tested the 200 SMA on the 4-hour time frame. To me, that's really it. Once we close a 4-hour candle below the 200 SMA, we're likely going to get a drop, in my opinion, and come and test this $37,009, $38,000 level, which was the top of this previous ascending triangle. If we can get a bounce and stay, consolidated inside the zone, then, we're back on track and all is well. So there's a chance we're still inside this trend, and I'm open-minded to that, and we're going to get a bounce on the 4-hour in somewhat of kind of a double bottom fashion here. So what happens this weekend and into Monday is really going to tell a lot. By Sunday night into Monday, we should be able to see either a breakdown of this trend line and a test of this area, or a break back up in consolidation. A break back up in consolidation can be like sign of relief, just like when we bounced here, and we can all kind of go back into the fact that this is the pattern and this could happen. Otherwise, there is the idea that this is a giant double bottom on the daily, and we are headed lower for Bitcoin. So where do we want to see, and how do we take advantage of this? Well, we don't want to see a daily candle close below this trend line. We don't want to see a daily candle close below here. We don't want to see a 4-hour candle close below the 200 SMA. Once we see that, we're going to start heading to the 200 SMA on the 8-hour time frame, and that's going to be the double top pattern here. And then you can see the gap in the VRVP here, and it only makes sense that we would come down and test 37,850. It just would only make a lot of sense. So how we take advantage is if we see a candle on the 4-hour close below the 200 SMA, we begin to open up a short to head down to the 8-hour 200 SMA, and then we go from there. So I do see a possible short here with this double top and the inability to get above this resistance at 44,580. Even lower there was 44,200. So we're having issues on the macro level for Bitcoin. And when you just look at the 3-day chart, it would make sense that you would come down and test the 200 SMA. Whether we make a bigger falling wedge here or we stay inside this pattern and come and hang out and go sideways before our bigger move is the question. Either way, I'm still bullish on the macro for Bitcoin. Whether we pull back here and spend maybe a month and a half pulling back and we retest 38, I still see a blast back to 50K into February and then as we head into the halving. But we could go, more sideways and break up. The key is if we do go sideways, Bitcoin will have a higher target of about 53,000. If we make the falling wedge, it's more about 50K. So we will see. Only time will tell. But, no 50K for Christmas, right? We didn't get that rally. It does not look like we'll see 50K by the end of the year. And there's only 2 more days left of the year. So I also tell everyone, and I've talked about this before, be careful trading the last 2 days of the year. There's a lot of angst, a lot of anxiety. I usually just kind of step away. I make my last few trades, maybe, a couple days before Christmas. And then from Christmas to New Year's Day, I usually just step aside and let the market do its thing. Make a few, if I'm in a swing trade here and there, so be it. But I make a few light add-ons to my portfolio. If the market takes a dip, right, I take advantage. But, of course, whatever happens, I take advantage. It's not like I don't touch the market no matter what. But in general, I don't go as heavy in those 7 days. I let the market feel itself out, and I come back the next year ready to rock. So this is what I see for Bitcoin. The 21 on the 3-day definitely wants to interact with price action. The odds to me are that we will get a bit of a pullback, but I honestly don't know. Usually I can have I'll go this way or that way. If we go below this area, I'm shorting. If we stay inside here, right, we're consolidating, and I'm going to enter into a long or DCA into a long as we continue to move through the end of this nose. So whatever price action does is whatever I will be doing. And I'm not going to speculate either way like I know, right, because that's usually how any trader can get hurt. But technically still somewhat inside of this pattern, holding the 200 SMA on the 4 hour. As long as we do that, we can remain bullish for Bitcoin, all right? So that's Bitcoin. Total market cap is all of the altcoins and Ethereum and Bitcoin, everything together, just all meshed together. And you can see we called this bigger move to the upside on total, right? We talked about the fact that we were going to break on out and hit these key levels, 1.64 for total market cap. We had drawn this flag here. Then we had drawn this falling, kind of wedged flag. We broke out. We hit that last target at 1.64. Now, if we can break back above this, we will go higher. You can see this is wedged higher than Bitcoin, which is interesting. Bitcoin has a more lateral. It's the same triangle, but Bitcoin has a double top. This has a higher high, right? And this tells me that the daily could be resetting quicker too here. So there's kind of a little more bullishness, and that's the altcoins. People really like the alts, and the altcoins are stirring this up because you can see why is this different than Bitcoin, even though it has pretty big dominance. Well, 51% right now. Well, because the altcoins are really taking a lot of market share. Bitcoin dominance has fallen a lot, and we're going to talk about that in a second. So here's the deal. Can we stay inside the zone? Can we respect previous resistance as support and hang out at 1.58 trillion? The second we lose 1.58 trillion, we're going to come and hit this 1.5 trillion, and then there's a chance we start to make a more lateral fall to the downside. Same situation here. If we look at the 3-day chart, it's about that 21 SMA, right? We could be making these flags, or we could be propelling ourselves further to the upside. If we get that bounce on Bitcoin, total's going to bounce. If altcoins will bounce with it, we'll end up getting tight inside this, and then it's very likelihood we get the breakout. If we get the fall, we'll start to break this white line here, and then we'll start to make a falling wedge. So what I have drawn right here is going to tell me what's likely going to happen before, I believe before most people. I'm going to be able to see it based on my years of trading these types of patterns and watching how they move inside and out of each other. So watching what I see is nice here, and it's not the worst thing in the world. Let's see if we can get the bounce back to the upside for total. So really, the next day and a half, 2 days, have a lot of weight on what happens to the market. If we get this bounce, then I come back next week probably showing something of us somewhere over here. But that will be, here's the 29th, so I'll be somewhere here on the 6th or the 5th, right? Yeah, it'll be the 5th here, going over it. And we'll be like, wow, we went sideways and we stayed inside. Otherwise, the 5th, we're going to be somewhere down here and say, oh, well, we took the move down, right? What do I see happening? I mean, right now we have previous support and resistance holding. We're getting oversold. There's a good chance we do get the bounce for the overall market here, but only time will tell. Total 3 is the entire market cap of all of cryptocurrencies, excluding Bitcoin and Ethereum. All right. And this is a big deal, right? This is like how much the altcoins are going to hit. Now, we talked about the altcoins in this flag breaking up, and we said we could probably get to $528 billion. And we got there. We got really pretty much to this target. We got to 522, a little more to the bigger target. We had this flag, that flag. We've been on total 3, which has been our go-to time frame ever since we saw this Adam and Eve double bottom, right? And then we formed these flags to the upside. And Bitcoin did wick on the daily to the exact targets of 528. You can see we hit it on the daily chart. So it's the same idea here. Now, do we fall further down and make a more lateral, a vertical consolidation, or do we make a more sideways consolidation? And that's kind of the question that I'm aiming to ask and to answer. Right now, I still see bearishness on the 1 hour. The 4 hours got a little bit of bearishness left. The 1 hours are right. So, and I'm not in love with this pattern at all. So I'm just going to delete these one more time and just see if I see anything different that gets me thinking or gets me going. I mean, I really see a rounded top beginning to form. It's not my favorite pattern, I'll be honest. And I see some bearish divergence here that's pretty strong. To me, that says you're going to likely get a pullback, right? So if we don't get a pullback and we end up going sideways, I'll be more surprised. And then if we lose but again, it's all about us losing the 21 on the 1 hour. See, this, you have to lose the 200 SMA on the 1 hour. Then we'll be looking for the 200 SMA on the 4 hour time frame, which would take us further down and probably hit us at 468. So to me, it does look like the altcoins want to make a bit of a pullback, but there's no guarantees. If Bitcoin gets the bounce, the whole market's going to kind of rejoice off that. And altcoins are going to get the bounce here too as well. So what I look for is divergence on the smaller time frames, but I attempt to keep this macro. At the end of the day, we just want to make sure we close a weekly candle above 49.7. As long as we close above 497, like where we just peaked up above here, right here, we're good to go. If we close below, we're likely going to come back down and test 468. So you're looking for the weekly candle to close above the 498 level. It's pretty crucial. 500 bill, keep a half a trill in the, and you have moving averages coming, which is a good sign, right? Even on the 3-day chart, you just had a golden cross on the total 3, which says, hey, there's a big move coming for these altcoins. They're just getting started. Slight pullback and then a big move. And don't get scared by the little pullbacks. Always zoom out and see the big picture, right? The DXY has a bullish divergence in the 4 hour. That could get a bounce, but it tried so far and hasn't given much. Stochastics even reset all the way to the top, and we didn't get much move at all. So it's a good sign that we're not getting much strength out of the dollar, and that could help Bitcoin not dump too bad. Today, it got a little bit of a bounce back, but not too much. Previous support is still resistance for the dollar. I see the dollar as it broke below that 3-day chart, right, as you can see on this macro event here, and the weekly too as well. It's headed to the weekly 200 SMA. Usually we'll bounce off that, but once you lose the weekly 200 SMA, which you have before right here, that's the beginning of like the most bearish times for the dollar. And honestly, it seems to do it when it gets this close. So it's likely we're going to at least come and test that. So I'm basically waiting for, the DXY lost the 200 SMA on the 3-day. Once that closed, we know we were bearish. All right. And I'm looking for this to kind of just, if it tries, do some type of bearish retest or make some type of bear flag here and can stay below the 200 SMA. As long as it stays below the 200 SMA on the 3-day, it's gonna come to the 200 SMA on the 4-day and lose that. And then the same thing like a flip up, lose the 5-day, lose the 7-day, and then you're gonna see it lose the weekly. So I'm looking for the DXY to come all the way down to that weekly at 98 and lose 100. That's what looks most likely on the radar. If we got a super crazy reversal bounce back to the upside, I would be really surprised based on years of what I'm watching these types of assets and doing analysis. Bitcoin dominance. Let's take a look at it on the weekly as well, on the big boy time frame, and stay off of that 7-minute for now. I was probably scalping, so I'm usually watching the smaller time frames. So Bitcoin dominance has a rising wedge on the weekly, right? Rising wedges break down 68% of the time. You can see I kind of have it drawn here, the rising wedge. Could we enter it back in? I say no, because you have to do too much of a cheat off the angle, right? So yeah, we're breaking to the downside. There's some bearishness for Bitcoin dominance. It's been good. The altcoins have been ripping the last 3 weeks. That's Bitcoin dominance falling to the downside. If we lose this key level, though, we're going to drop again further down, and Bitcoin dominance is going to drop to 48. What we want to see is, does Tether dominance want to drop as well, or pump? Tether dominance may try to get back some share here. People might get they might get some fear back in the market. I'm sniffing some fear, just because what if we get a bounce back up? What we want to see is Tether dominance stay below this 200 SMA on the 4-hour, stay below the 200 SMA on the 5 days. So the one that it just went below, we want to make sure that this stays below that. As that happens, we're going to be pretty good for Bitcoin to continue to rally. If this gets back above on the 5-day chart, that's something we want to pay attention to. So I would be watching US Tether dominance on the 5-day, and I'd be watching that 200 SMA. If we flip that back to bullish, that's going to be something that, causes caution for the longs. It would be good to short Bitcoin if we do flip that back bullishly. All right. So Bitcoin dominance goes hand in hand with Tether dominance. I look at them together because I want to see kind of the ebb and flow of the money going in and out between Bitcoin and into Tether. So right now we see a pullback. I mean, pretty oversold, but previous resistance is support right now. But the daily's pretty beat down. Let's get our moving averages on here. And, we did lose the 200 SMA on the 12-hour time frame. So this tells me that, Bitcoin may be pulling back a little bit here, right? Because you already fell out of the pattern. You're coming on down. And Tether dominance may get a little bit of a bounce. So, and the DXY even may get a bounce. So this is telling me to be careful. Next week, we may get the pullback to 38K. It's starting to tell us something that the move to the downside is getting more likely. So we do have to listen to this. Today, the S&P followed Bitcoin. You know what I mean? It's about to close in 4 minutes. But today, and here's the futures too. But the S&P followed Bitcoin. One of them went, but both of them went down. The money supply was ripped away. The dollar came back a little bit, and it jarred, all these risk assets. You see now we kind of have a double top with some bearish divergence on the S&P futures. Tells me to be careful and that the daily is likely to pull back. But we've been ripping for days now, ever since really October 27th. Just like altcoins. You can see the S&P, if you're in an altcoin, it's been ripping just like the S&P, right? You can see the similarities between an S&P chart and an altcoin chart. Obviously, the multiples are way higher on an altcoin, but it's the same concept, right? So here, it looks like we're going to come back down and test the 21-day moving average. Bit of bearish div right there, too, and bearish div on the 4-hour. Suggests that we do. Now, we could make something like this, and we could be making like a more lateral pattern, and that would be gravy if we do something like that. That would just be more bullish. So again, we're back to the same idea. Which one do we pick? But I do see some type of pullback. You're very overbought on the RSI. That has to come back down to its lower dotted line as well. And we've had a pretty good rally on the S&P for a while now. Even if we came back all the way down and tested the top here before a bigger pump, it would make sense, even if we tested 46.16. So remember, it's okay to get a pullback. You don't want to pump forever. Right here, look, we pumped basically a little bit of sideways and then pumped again. And we called this from down here. It's been a pretty amazing run for the S&P. So I'd keep the S&P in this sideways triangle. And a week from now, I want to come back and see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 candles. And I want to be somewhere here continuing sideways. Either way, I'm still bullish on a bigger breakout down the line and a continuation. It's just how are we going to continue is the question. And, that takes us down from Bitcoin to total 3, to the DXY, to Bitcoin dominance, US Tether dominance, and the S&P futures. And remember, Tether dominance, we want it to stay below the 200 SMA on the 5-day chart. Once it gets back above that, start looking for some more bullish signs on like the 1 hour and the 4 hour. As long as it stays below this, I'm more macro bearish on it, and it kind of puts everything back into line for us. So this is very key that we stay below this yellow line on the 200 SMA. You can see the 5-day kind of has a lot of the keys to what's likely going to happen in the next few days is that 5-day chart. Everybody, thank you so much for watching my macro technical analysis every single Friday. I greatly appreciate you for jumping on in. Hope you're having a wonderful day at the end of the year. May God bless you and your family on this holiday season. Hope you had a great Christmas. Hope you're having a good, you have a good New Year's plans, and, you're doing something with the family, or you're traveling, or you're with everybody. And thank you so much for jumping on in and watching my channel. It's been an amazing 2023 from everybody here, the whole staff over at the Crypto Lifer channel, from me and my family, my children, to my wife, to you guys. Thank you so much for everything from the bottom of my heart, seriously, to each and every one of you that made this channel a hit in 2023. I hope we can replicate what we did again, and I know we will in 2024. God bless all of you, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you when I'm back with some more content. Please comment, like, and subscribe. And crypto is life, baby. If you came to the channel, then you're already doing the right thing. God bless.